Hello and welcome to Simply Coding. Today we're just going to go through some of the basic ways of how you loop through lists in typical programming languages. I'm going to use JavaScript, but in most common modern languages you can do very similar things. What I've opened up here is just CodePen. This is a simple tool that you can use to just write some basic JavaScript and run it and see what happens. So let's start here by let's create a list here. Okay, so there we have our list of words here. So the one way to iterate through this list is to use a so-called while loop. So then we have an index here that we set to 0 first, and then we have a while loop. I'm new with this keyboard. Okay. And what we say here is that while index is less than the length of the list, then we do this. And remember here that if you have a list of something, the index 0, it always starts with an index 0 and then 1 and 2. So if there are 3 elements in the list, the length of the list will always be 1 more than the maximum index. So this is typically how such a loop will look like. So what you can do here is like there, and then we try to run it. So we can see here that it printed foo, fi, fum. It went through all the words and printed one of them. And what we did here was, first we have this index here that is set to 0 at the beginning. And while we're not, while we're still below the length of the list, we do this. We simply print out the word at the index that we're currently on, and then we do this index plus plus, and that means that we add 1 to the index value we have here. Don't forget this one, because if you do, then you will have an infinite loop here and you will get stuck, and sometimes you might need to close your browser windows because it doesn't like infinite loop. So this is like one of the basics ways to do a loop, and this can be useful sometimes. For example, when you want to loop through 2 lists at the same time for some reason. But recently there are more fancy way to do this. So we can do like this. Let's comment that one out. So what we do here is a more modern approach. What we do here is that we have a special construct here that when we already have a list of words, there's a more compact syntax for just looping through all of these words, and we pick one word at a time here. So if we run this, let's see what happens. Then we get the same list again here. Now I didn't clear it first, so you see the old result first. But okay, let's clear it. So this is a more modern and simple way to do the same thing. But sometimes, like I said, when you're looping through multiple lists at the same time for some reason, you might need the first one. So that's that one. Then we can look at. There's an old-fashioned way of doing this, really old-fashioned, that looks a little bit like this. I think it's the opposite way. Okay, now let's try again. Console, I just copied that from Word. Okay, so okay. Okay, so this is not something I would use very often as a programmer. Maybe if you work with some more old style programming language like C or something, maybe you would use it. But this is an old style where you first set up the loop variable here. You have the ending conditions, very similar to the while loop, and then you already here in the for statement you say how you're gonna increment it by adding 1 to them. You can actually increment it by 2 if you have some reason to do that, but typically, so this is the this is a kind of old style of looping through a list. And but out of these three, this is typically the one you would use if you're working on a product or something. This one, sometimes you need it because you need the flexibility. There's also an alternative to that one that is called like this. And then you would have the condition, then you would have the condition here of what to do or when to break the loop. But the only difference between this and the normal while loop is that here you start doing something before you check the condition. And one thing to notice about a while loop is that that might not be obvious for new people that start with programming. The condition is only checked every time you restart the loop. So if the condition somehow changes somewhere inside the loop, it will not be checked until it goes all the way down to the end and then starts at the beginning, and then it will check the condition. So that's the idea of a while loop. So as a last thing then, what's another way to iterate through the list of words? Yeah, that is to use a recursive function. We can have a function called print all words or print words, and then we can take a list and it can take an index as an argument. And inside this, what should we do? We should do if, and now we use an if statement here instead as an ending condition, and we have index smaller than, then if the index is smaller than the length of the list, then we're still inside the list, and then we can console log the list at that index. Okay, so then we print it out, but what should we do with the rest of the list? This only printed the first thing. So what we do then is a so-called a recursive call, that the function calls itself. It's the same list and index, or we could have index plus 1 is more clear, because what we do is we have a function here, print words, and that function will call itself print word with an index that is 1 higher. And all we got to do now in the end here is we call our print words with the words array we had, and then we start at index 0. So now let's see if this works. Let's clear the buffer and then we run it and see if we have any bugs or if it works. No, it worked. So what we do here is like that when it comes to the first word, when index is 0, it prints the first, of course, and then it adds it on. There's an optimization here even, that you might think that this will cause a lot of records on the call stack, but there's actually usually in many programming languages there's an optimization when the recursive call is lost in the function. So it's fairly efficient way to do it also. So that's the last way. And so those are essentially the ways which you iterate through a list in programming when you do that. And why would you want to do that? That's to build stuff, to generate UI components, and often you use it to build sets or maps that we were going to discuss in other episodes. You iterate through a number of things to build some data structure that you can then use to do something. So those are the basic things of software development that you do a lot. And for different programming languages there are variants of these, but it's typically a while loop, a for loop, some kind of optimized for iteration here, or a more old style for loop, or you can use some recursive way of iterating through your data. Recursive way of iterating through data is usually used when you have tree structures, or that's also something that we're going to discuss later on. But for now, these are the basics of iteration. So there you go. That's it for today. Please like and subscribe. Simply Programming. Okay, bye bye.